Well, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's NCLUG presentation with NCDOT on OpenX Update Week. OpenX, we're referring to all the Bentley Connect Edition brands. So NCLUG is proud to partner with the NC Department of Transportation to bring you these updates. This webinar will be on hydraulics. But first, just some housekeeping details to go over. This is a webinar presentation, so we'll just plan to mute everybody, but anytime during the webinar, you can submit your question in the chat box, and as time allows, we'll field questions at the end. We will be recording the webinar and sharing the link after the event. Most all the ones that to now have already been posted, so go check those out. And we will be offering PDH credits to those who have registered on the website for this, and we'll be sharing that link at the end of the meeting, and we'll also probably be sending out one mass email to everybody next week with those in case you missed them. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Bill Elam to give us our presentation today. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey folks, thanks for joining us. My name is Bill Elam. I'm embedded at NCDOT hydraulics unit to try to help incorporate ORD into the hydraulics unit. I have about 25 years of experience, or I worked for DOT for 30 years. So as we start off, I want to tell you, I don't know the answers to a lot of these questions that I've got today. I've got 25 years of geotech and geopack and geopack drainage knowledge, and I've got a phone ringing in here. So it's stored in my head, and I need to try to forget that, as Carl Dauber and Robert Garrett have told me. But it's awfully hard to forget what you've been doing for the last 25 years, and absorb ORD, which is very different from what we've been doing with geopack drainage and even with geopack. So as we go through this stuff, if y'all have ideas, please let us know. Please send us suggestions. I have already put the hydraulics CAD support email address in the chat, and you can contact us with that stuff. We're going to try to do some poll questions as we go through this to try to figure out who our audience is to an extent. But we'll get started now. The ORD 10.10.20 that we were all waiting on has been released. It was released on Wednesday, or last Wednesday. So it's not a change in schema. So if you're able to download it, you should be able to download it. It should work. Some of the changes that we were hoping for are supposed to be in there. The minimum cover design, time of concentration is supposed to be fixed, and I think some things with some drainage areas and some other minor bug fixes are going to be fixed for us. So once we get it downloaded, hopefully next week sometime, we'll be able to get in there and look at it, start making revisions to our workspace, and modify our drainage manual if we need to. So the first poll question that Patty's going to try to launch is, how many of y'all are primarily DOT or hydraulic users? So that's a kind of a yes, no, or sometimes.
And that poll's popping up in the chat box.
Chat, yeah. So there's going to be a follow-up question on that, and that is, how many of y'all actually opened up a file in ORD on purpose? So which one is that one? All right. Have you got the second one in there yet, Patty?
Yep, it should just be.
It just came up. Yep. So I've actually opened up one on purpose. So if you're not a hydro user and you've been already working in ORD, you're going to get kind of bored with a lot of my discussion today, because I'm going to start on the basics. How to download the workspaces, how to open up a file, and some other things like that, and show you some other things. So let me share my screen so you can quit looking at my bald head. I once got told when we were taking a unit picture that I needed to move to the other side because the sun was shining off my head and messing up the camera. So if you're downloading workspaces and you've never done it before, the best place to go is for CAD consultants. Go into the CAD services, go to CAD consultants, and you come down here to the CAD downloads, and you will click on this, the top button typically, and that's going to download a zip file into your zip directory. If you have already downloaded or somebody's already put workspaces on your machine, you're going to need to go, before you extract it, you will need to delete those workspaces. Because if you don't delete the workspaces, then it's going to not download correctly. So once the file's been downloaded, once you've deleted the old ORD workspaces, you'll then extract the file, and you need to make sure you extract it to the root directory or to the C directory. There again, the zip file is going to want to unzip it to a folder, and if you don't do it, it's not going to download correctly. It's not going to work correctly. So there are two actual types of workspaces. We have a
Did something happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, Bill, you're frozen.
Let me go check on him.
Thanks, Ernie.
He doesn't have a 4K panel, does he?
This is what happens when we're live, folks. We'll get it back up in just a second. In the meantime, I don't think it's too late to sign up. We have our OpenX games tonight at 5, some trivia. So you can still sign up and register for that and join us tonight. And I think at 2:30 we have construction. Is that our, yeah, the construction unit and their 2:30 event today. And Thursday, when we have our wrap-up session, just so y'all know, we'll actually be having some different consultant firms coming and talking about their pilot programs and how it's working. So I think that could be of very interest to a lot of people. I think they are going to be covering hydro workarounds and cross-section issues too in that session. And that's Thursday at 2:30.
Yeah, and they're NCDOT projects too. They're not other DOT's projects.
That's correct.
So Bill's hotspot just died. Sorry, everyone. He's looking to move to another computer. So if you can just bear with us for another 5 minutes or so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, just talking about the Thursday Q&A wrap up, we're excited about the 3 firms to share some of their challenges and success stories with us on the pilot projects. I know the some of the projects were very intensive and very long and had put a lot of work into the building that model. It may lead up to some really good discussion on, we talk about the level of detail, how much to show at each phase of submittal.
I'm back on, Oak. I don't know what happened. Yeah. Somebody had to have technical difficulties, didn't we?
Yeah. All right, we see your screen.
All right. So we were talking about downloading workspaces, talking about ProjectWise versus non-managed versus non-managed workspaces. Is that, when did I get cut off?
I think that's right.
Okay.
Two types of workspaces.
Okay. So the managed workspace is based on ProjectWise, and you're gonna, when you open up a file on ProjectWise, it's gonna pull the correct role. It's gonna pull, there's gonna be one work set from my understanding, and it's gonna pull the right workspaces. So life is reasonably easy if you're willing to go ProjectWise. If you download from the non-managed workspace, then you're gonna be working on your machine. You're gonna pick your role, you're gonna pick your work set, and you've got to make sure you keep your workspaces updated, which CAD Services says they're going to probably download once a week, based on the number of updates. So did I show how to download the workspaces, Ernie? Or did we get kicked off before then?
No, we did go through this.
Okay. All right. So let's show how to open up. Oh, one thing I've got to make sure to show you, if you're in hydraulics, and I think this is going to stay true for a while, you've got to pull out a shortcut because we've lost configuration variables in order for ProjectWise and opening up a file on your machine, open or play nice together. So you're going to go to your workspaces. You're going to go to configuration file, workspaces, North Carolina DOT, North Carolina, and you'll go to desk, and you come in for a hydraulics user. You'll copy a shortcut out for the NCDOT hydraulics, and that will launch ORD in the way you want it to do. So if we want to launch a file now in the non-managed, for those of y'all that have opened up files, I apologize, but I know that a lot of talking pre-construction, a lot of folks from hydraulics people have not started playing an ORD yet. They don't have the time to do it, so they haven't opened anything. So typically, sometimes when you, that's a great word, when you get in, you're going to have, it's going to say no workspace, no work set. So you'll want to come in and pick your work set. You'll get your work set, and then in my case, it defaulted to the right role. If you need to create a file, we no longer have DGN generator. So you'll pick the new file, and now you got to go get us. We're lucky in this case that it defaulted to the right seed file, and it may always do that because of the configuration file. You're going to want to save it, put a name in, and I'll call mine Bill's Test 100. And you're going to want to path it where you want to go. It seems like it wants to default in the work set. I don't think you want to save it in the work set. So we're going to back out. You'd go to a C drive. You go to your tip server, C drive, S drive, wherever y'all are saving files, and you'd save a file. So once you open that file, it's going to look, that's the ProjectWise one. Let's go ahead and show how you would open up a ProjectWise file. You would launch ProjectWise. You can do it a couple ways. You can type in ProjectWise down here, but you'll launch it. It'll come up. Right now, we're all playing in the development, training and development section. So if I want to open up a file, if I want to create a new file, I'm going to come in. I've got two choices. I can click new here and document, or I can come here and click new there. I've just been using the wizard. And you say, okay. And we just follow the wizard. We get to a trick question where it wants to know what we're going to use as a template. I've got a seed file saved in here, so I could click here and I could choose select in here. If you don't already have the template selected, then you would need to go up here and browse And I imagine that eventually we're going to be able to tell everybody where the seed file, the workspaces are and the seed file is. So in this case, we go to administration. We go to Bentley, 1010, civil, and Ernie's gonna put some of these links in, or I guess since it's being recorded, we will have that. NCDOT, come down to seed file, and you've got a 2D seed file that you would create the file. But we'll say open. Next, you put your file in, file name in, you can put a description in, say next, and then it's going to create it. Typically right now, if I'm opening up a file on ORD on ProjectWise, it takes about a minute. If there's nothing attached for this test file, it takes 2 or 3 minutes, seems like, for it to churn through and open up the 28 files. So let me make sure where I'm at on my stuff. Manage versus, there we go. All right, so let's show you what's going on. I want to try to make sure we're all talking in common terms. So if y'all call in for support and we tell you, because Carl and Tim and Robert have all had fits with me with telling me to go to a ribbon or a workflow, and I don't always know what they're talking about, but I'm getting better. So this is your ribbon. This is our workflows. If you're a hydraulics user, you're going to typically either be in drainage and utilities or the OpenRoads modeling, especially if you're using the ditch manual. This is our quick access toolbar up here. The standard ones are saving a file, save settings, compress, and undo. You have the ability to come in and add extra tools up here. You can click on that little down arrow. Customize the quick access toolbar will allow you to add tools up there. The handy dandy tool that most people will enjoy is the search bar, where you can type in anything you need to do. So if I want to place shape, I just type in place shape and it will bring it up and it will launch the tool. That way you don't have to know where to find it on these tabs, because this is the next thing. These are tabs. These are called groups up here. And so depending on where you're at, whether you're in analysis, you've got a different set of groups. Layout, different set of groups. So we just got to learn where things are. From V8, they've moved things. We used to have things like preferences and utilities up here. Now they've moved that backstage. So if you want to come in, you start playing, you want to set up your buttons, you would come down into settings, go to button assignments, and that looks familiar to everybody. You can come down here and remap your stuff. Another option you have that Carl taught me last week was I can add tools to my front screen. So they come up, here's your options. So I added these 2 or 3 toolbars right here that make things easier for me to get around if I don't want to have to type up in the search menu. So now I've got so many choices, I don't always know where to look. Some other handy dandy things that you can do is you can hold and right click. You got tools here. You can hit your space bar and you get a series of tools. Or Ethan taught us the other day, you can hit Q and the same set of toolbars that hits on the space bar comes up. Just instead of being a picture, it comes up as words. So I think those are pretty useful. And V8, we had a toolbar that was created by Mike Kelly and CAD Services, and it's exists up here whenever you're in the Hydro workspace. The first 5 or 6 tabs were allowed you to place anything, typicals, line styles, pipes, boxes, permit drawing things, legends, line style, hatching, anything you needed to place. It was in this. It launched the tool and it put it on the right level. This toolbar is gone in ORD, so we have replaced the majority of it with using element templates. So an example of element templates is we'll drive down into the hydraulics. If you want to draw a drainage area, you go into plans. We tried to keep it in the same spot that Mike had it in his, trying to make it logical. So if I want to just draw a drainage area in a certain color, now I've picked it. Now I need to place shape. I've got 3 ways I can do it. I've got my place shape up here. I can go to drawing, and I've got place a shape here, or I can type place a shape there. I clicked the wrong thing. I'll just type sheet. So now I can draw my drainage area. And if you look, it's on the right level. If you want to place a typical, a ditch detail, we've got details listed. You come in and pick any ditch you want to place. You do the place cell command, and it launches. So it's 2 steps instead of 1, but it does get it done. So if we want to talk about terrains, that's one of the next things. Hydro users are probably typically going to have to create a proposed terrain model to use with drainage. We've got instructions on how to do that in our manual. Our manual is again located. Hang on, not that one. There we go. So our manual's located on our hydro webpage under drainage manual. So it's pretty intuitive, and you can come down here and you can just click on the thing in the table of contents and it will take you to where you need to go. And Jordan and Brian wrote good explanation on how to create terrain, how to create terrain models, how to merge them. What I would do is most users are probably going to want to download a LiDAR file from either the FMP site or from photogrammetry server, depending on who you are and what access you have, and merge it with the final survey terrain model. I would not merge it with the proposed, because if roadway needs to change theirs, then you're going to have to be going back and re-merging it every time. So I would just merge the existing and leave the existing and proposed separate. But y'all can let me know what your opinion is. It's not an automatic process. So the next thing I need to show y'all, probably talking too fast. Ernie's not telling me to slow down though, so I guess I'm doing all right. Show you how to do cross sections. I don't like cross sections right now. Hopefully we'll learn more. Somebody will teach me something better. If I right click and hold down, I'll come up with view control. And now I'm going to go to this one and say plan view and cross section. It asks me if I want to create the dynamic view. I say, okay. I'm going to go in here and I'm going to pick my alignment. Then I'm going to go to the left. I've got it preset for 200 feet. So it's 200 feet left, 200 feet right. Starts the first station. I'm going to try every 25 feet. And then I'm going to come down here and select my view. And it will open at some point in time. So you can see your cross section up here. Please don't crash. And I guess it did crash. Oh, it's coming back. All right. So you can see our cross section here. I'm going to zoom out here real quick in the top view. This is something I'm trying to get used to, is the fact that you have to make sure you click in. Something doesn't appear to be right. A second, maybe it'll come up. All right. This line right here indicates, this greenish line, bluish line indicates where the cross section is showing you. So if I want to go ahead, so I can go in here and I can just toggle forward like that and move it one at a time. I can also come in here and type in a given station. Except that one didn't work. All right. So that took us to cross section 31. Interesting thing is, you'll note here I've got a pipe. You can see the pipe in the cross section view. And if we toggle forward one more, we'll be able to see the actual, we'll be able to see structures in that view. We can't, you can draw in this view, but it doesn't do any good to. So if I draw this line right here and I go to the next cross section, that line is still there. So it is just in the view. It's not on that cross section. And I think that is something that's going to cause headaches for hydraulic users. You can come in here and you can see the AccuDraw options on the bottom. So you can come in here and tentative on things and find out an elevation and an offset. So that is helpful. So that launches the third poll question, which is how many hydro users like to be able to sketch their ditches in a cross-section file before trying to do their final design. So Patty, if you can launch that.
I've already launched
Okay.
it.
Okay.
You should have results there.
Okay.
60% said yes.
Okay. So we're going to work on that because that's an issue, because the other option is, and I'll try to show you this, and we don't know if it's going to blow up. If I go to file and open up, come on. We're going to go to a cross-section file. Is that going to work? That's not going to work. Where did my other cross-section file go? Give me a minute. All right, there we go. Is this one on? Maybe that's why. I know what I'm doing now. I'm on the wrong. Oh, I got kicked out of that file. I did get kicked out of that file. Hang on. I had two files up, one in ProjectWise and one in off the server. All right, so we'll open up that cross section. So it comes in as a drawing file. So we've talked before in the last couple presentations we've done that there are three types of models that can be in a file. There's a design model, a drawing model, and a sheets model. What I can tell, and Oak and Dean and them can correct me, there is not a design version of the cross sections. We appear to have a drawing model and a sheets model. So that's not great for how we're used to it, but I guess we're going to have to adjust to change. So hopefully this is going to work. So that's what it looks like. Now I come down here to where the models are, and I'm going to pull up a cross section. And you can see this is a drawing model, and you can tell it's a drawing model because it's gray. The design models are black and the sheet models are white. So let me find one that's actually got a ditch in it. That one still doesn't have a ditch. All right. So here again, you can draw in this one now, and you can use AccuDraw to help draw in it. But I'm hoping that folks will show us better ways to do this. And some of it is we just got to change, and we're going to use the manual, the ditch manual, and the processes that Carl's come up with for ditches to help us draw ditches. But there's a lot of us that still like to be able to sketch stuff and see what it's going to look like before we go through the trouble of drawing a ditch. So, and if it's a special cut ditch, it's going to be different. We can't really run the ditch process that we've developed. So this is something we're still learning about. And if y'all get some suggestions, send us an email. Profiles are the same way from my best understanding. There's not really a profile. There's not a PFLDGN file anymore. So you see it in drawing, you see it in the sheet files. So I don't have an example of one of those, but that's what That's how I understand that's going to be working. So we've got to figure out. So that brings us up to the bridge and culvert reports, which we've done one back in 2020. Corey Cavalier did one back in 2020. So we'll see how we're going to go back in and see how that worked and try to figure out what we need to refine on that to make it more efficient, how we're going to pull in profiles, how we're going to cut cross sections and place them in there, which we've always done on ditches. I mean, on bridge and culvert reports, because we draft in those culvert reports. So we'll get back to you. If anybody's done a bridge and culvert report already, send us what you got. So y'all, Ethan showed you on Monday. If you went to Ethan's presentation on Monday, Ethan showed y'all how to use the Civil AccuDraw tool. So Hydro is going to recommend that you create your own tool, a favorite called Station Offset Unlink, or you can call it whatever you want. And we've got directions on how to do that in our manual, which let me get the manual back up. But that's not where the manual's at. The manual's here. So if we go back up to I know it's in Appendix A. So if you go to Appendix A, and Jordan's got written on how to create it, and I think possibly on how to use it. So that's what I would recommend. One of the things that you build in the drainage plans. Reduce that without messing that up. All right. So now when you run scenarios, we're going to have to, so in geopack drainage, you ran it did 4 inches per hour. We set it in the preferences, and you set your storm drain design for a 10-year storm. When you run it now, you're going to run a 4 inch per hour scenario and a 10-year scenario. You're going to have to export both of those to a spreadsheet. It runs all the systems that are in that DRN file at one time. In geopack drainage, you were in one system at a time. Now it runs all the systems that are in that DRN file. I think there may be some way to toggle it off, but I'm not familiar with it as of yet. So the suggestion's been made by Robert and by Carl that we break these up into smaller DRN files and we reference them into what I think people are calling them container files. So I would recommend that if you do that, when you do this, you're going to want to break it up between crest and crest or between really large drain systems, with the goal being that you can do it in a place where bypass from one system to another that would be in a different DRN file is not an issue. I mean, you can hard code the bypass in there, but you've got to keep up with it if it changes. So what do I want to? Now, by breaking it up into separate DRN files, it should run faster. The file sizes should be better. Because if you look at the one that I have been working in here, that is a 16 meg file, which is a pretty big file for about 3 sheets of drainage, and just the ORD drainage part of it, not our text, or we haven't added ditches. Carl's suggesting we possibly put the ditches in a separate file also. It would all be referenced to the same place. So that brings up, are we ready to go to that question? Hang on, I'm getting off. All right, so one of the things that we've talked about that. We'll come back to it, revisit in a second. So we know that we had requested in geopack drainage, you had a place to put minimum cover. That's been added in 10.10.20, and I've got to go into the prototypes and make that change. We're going to see what else has been changed. Also, we are still seeing issues. Michelle and I both tested this a couple of times. If you work on if you're taking a file from ProjectWise and you choose to copy it out, so if you come in here and copy it out like this, when you copy it back in and then maybe copy it back out the next time, because if you were doing work for DOT, they want to see it at certain milestones. So if you copied it back in and then copied it back out, what we're seeing is that we're losing, this is not a good one to do it in, but we are losing attachments to the alignment and to the elevations that give it the intelligence for the inlets. And so the recommendation I would have at this point in time, most likely, is you work on ProjectWise and stay on ProjectWise, because I haven't seen that. I haven't had a link break yet there. Or you either work on your hard drive and stay on your hard drive or server. If you're going to pass it up and forth, we're still going to look to see, is there a way to extract it? Is there another method to do it that wouldn't break that tie with that roadway alignment? But we haven't found it yet. So now I want to try to show you how we've got some labeling created. It has not worked as well. I have civil labeler working, but it's broke today, just the way things are going. But we can make the place label, which is how we're going to label nodes right now. So we'll come in here and we'll pick this hexagon. We'll go to the place label tool, which is under drawing production. It went and pulled our cell. Now we can come in here, we click on this, and it knows what the structure number is, and it labeled it correctly. You can do it with or without a leader. So civil labeler is similar but different. And then annotation group, which is, or the drawing model annotation, is where we would like for our user to be able to start for labeling. And it will label more. It will label on a broader spectrum. It will label, but you will have to go in and rotate it, since we're probably going to do it in the design file. That's what's been recommended by Oak and by Bentley, as long as we kind of stay in silos. So that's where we're at on that. So the final poll question of the day is, if the best path forward is to break up the DRN files into multiple files and reference them into a container file, if we can label in that container file, how do you feel about having the drainage in one file and the text in another? So remember, if you did that, you would have to move your drainage in the small DRN files, and you would have to adjust your text in the container file. So if y'all respond to that, and I can't see at this point, I can't see maybe if I go into the chat, that may have been what blew this up to begin with.
It looks like 39% say no problem, about 50%.
So they don't know enough yet to have an opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there's a part of this that if we do this, and you're whoever's doing it, you can do it however you want to. It's just a suggestion. I guess it's not written in law. If you were working in a place where you were concerned about somebody moving your files around, and your hydraulics folder is protected and the drainage file folder isn't, then you could put the container file in the drainage folder, leave your hydraulic stuff in your smaller DRM files in your hydraulics folder, which is write protected. And then whoever's moving the text around at the end of the day only has access to move text around, and wouldn't necessarily inadvertently be able to delete a box or move a box or anything else. So it's something to think about, and let us know if you have other opinions. And not knowing is a valid opinion right now. So, so we're still working on drainage comp sheets. I was hoping to be able to show you an example today, but we don't have it ready yet. He sent it to me yesterday. I didn't get a chance to look at it. So again, like we said, we're going to have to export a 4-inch per hour scenario and a 10-year scenario. We will most likely do it. If you go to home, you can come to export utilities and you can export Excel, and that will kick off a spreadsheet that you'll save. We'll have to save it in a given location. We'll have 2 files, then we'll have one for 4 inches per hour. We'll have one for the 10-year storm. And then you would open up another one that we're working on that would then read those 2 files and get it formatted in the format that everybody's used to seeing. Drainage summary sheet's going to work pretty much the same way, except we're going to add item types. We're planning on using item types for driveway pipes, pipe removal, global fill, and pipe plugs. We'll create a spreadsheet for that, and we'll read in all 3 of those and hopefully populate it. It adds another level of difficulty with the fact if we have 5 DRN files that you have to run those 2 files for. So now you have 10 of them that we have to read and get into the storm drain sheets, storm drain comp sheets, and the drainage summary sheet. The flex tables work. They just, I don't think when somebody's doing a review, they're going to want to have to necessarily come in here and look at flex tables. And we could be, I could be wrong. So we'll find out. But that's flex table without having run it. That's what it looks very similar, but it doesn't just export. It exports to a CSV or a text file, which then has to get reformatted. So that's part of that problem. And if y'all have suggestions on that, we're willing to listen. So ditches, we've already talked about ditches in previous things. Carl's done a presentation on that, and he will do another one. He's created a civil cell that will help tie 2 ditches together and make the model look nice. We've got the workspaces about done to be able to push those up. We're hoping to create a video similar, a manual video link similar to what Location and Surveys is doing, where you can go through the manual and click on a link that'll get you to a timestamp part of the video so that you don't have to necessarily search the video to find the step you're looking for. I just need to find out how North Carolina DOT puts stuff on YouTube. And finally, plotting. We have not really tackled plotting at this point. Oak's still working on sheeting, and they're about done. And then we've got no excuses at that point. We're going to piggyback on their sheeting process and try to figure some stuff out, and we get started as soon as we can on that. So that is it for the presentation. Be happy to try to answer any questions.
Great. Appreciate that. It's very thorough.
Okay.
You look like a pro to me
Nah.
at all that. You went through that pretty smoothly. So yeah, if you have any questions, you can place them in the chat or raise your hand and I'll call on you to ask your question. I think there's one question in here. Would it be possible to have seed files embedded in the project directory on ProjectWise? I'm not sure if Elizabeth or anybody's on that could answer that.
That is definitely outside of my realm of knowledge. But Elizabeth's on, I think, so if she's listening, she can answer.
I'm here. I don't know if it would be beneficial. I am not sure that it's ever beneficial to have project-specific seed files.
Okay.
There's kind of a, an implied process that the seed files are the same for everything. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why you create them. So I would expect them to be outside of a project, but they can be inside. They can be wherever we like for them to be.
We just probably need to make sure, well, once we start putting live projects out there, where the workspaces are going to be, so it's easier for people. Or, of course, once you've opened up a file once with a seed file, created a file with a seed file, it's there. It'll be in that other window where you can go pick it, so it won't be as hard.
Right. Yeah, seed file is
Yeah.
just a template. So
Yeah.
anything that's in the seed file will be in your active file once it's created.
All right. And there's a comment in here from Oak talking about there's a difference between workspaces and the CAD services from ProjectWise and the roadway design. And that eventually there'll be one zip file on CAD services, but for the time there's a different one for roadway design.
There is, and we just made the decision that we needed to try to. Oak helps us, but he's not there. He's not really supposed to be our main support guy. So we decided we would go through the CAD services workspace and aggravate Kyle and Ethan and Elizabeth when we ran into workspace issues versus having to aggravate Oak, who's got enough to do.
Instead of copying out, can you export and lock the file? Would the links be broken in that case? Somebody's asking.
I don't know, and we'll probably try to test that. And Elizabeth and Tanya may know more about how to pull files out without breaking that link. Like I said, we've consistently seen problems when we tried the other one. When I have worked just in ProjectWise, I have not had the link break at all. So that's been nice. But I know there's hesitancy by engineering firms to basically work on the DOT ProjectWise cloud. So and I don't know what happens is if AECom's got ProjectWise, and I don't know if they work on their cloud and then move it to the NCDOT cloud. I don't know if that'll break it. But if you're working a big file and you've got 100 nodes in a file, and all of a sudden you lose connection, you're going to be mad.
Yeah.
And it's never going to happen on a day where you've got plenty of time to fix it. It's going to happen on that day when you
Trying to get it turned in or something done. Okay. And Crystal, you asked this question, but it might need more clarification. If you move between ProjectWise and like into your C, do you have to sync the documents since it's moving platforms?
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
So my question though is really like reflective of the whole thing. Like sometimes when you like for my experience when I've moved in between, even if I like take a file from another drive locally and then move it somewhere else, I usually have the same thing. I have my it'll show like my the way the design is supposed to look. It's usually broken and sometimes my future definitions don't show up correctly.
Right.
So I'll synchronize the drawing and then that'll help with like that'll get things back correctly and my templates looking correct.
Okay. I don't know what to try because it's a properties thing is where we're seeing it's in the property of the so I'm trying to see if I can get this to show up. Probably can't today. So you come down, so you have properties for a node, and I'm still not getting it. All right. It's not going to work for me today. It's a Monday. All right. So this is the part that we're losing. The elevation reference and the baseline reference is what's getting lost. But we can see if there's a sync that'll work. We've talked to Bentley, and Bentley just keeps telling us it's just the roadway did something to their to the alignment or to their file. And we know that in these cases, the file hadn't been really touched in a month or two. So the only thing we can assume is copying out and copying it back in. So.
Just for clarification, when you do export out, you are deciding not to use the managed workspace in ProjectWise. That's the only reason why you would export or copy out. Now, there is a export and manage copy where you are using the non-managed workspace, but still retain your alignment associations.
Okay.
And other stuff when checked back in. But as far as exporting files out of ProjectWise, you are deciding not to use the managed workspace built in ProjectWise when you do that.
So what would be the situation in this case right here as to why you would export it and not just work on it inside?
The reason is to some extent is I think there's you may find reluctance from some engineering firms to do work on the NCDOT cloud. That now whether or not that ends up being true a year from now, I don't know.
What do you mean do work on the cloud? Because all your files are downloaded locally.
Right,
You're not working.
You're going to check them back in when you're going to check them back in at the end of the day, and other people have right access to those files. And there's if I only work on it in on my hard drive or my or my cloud in my AECOM area, then nobody from DOT can get in there just to see what I'm doing and inadvertently mess something up.
We have all kinds of permission controls. If we need to set up a location for someone to work in ProjectWise, but no one has access other than themselves, I mean, that's not a problem at all. It just needs to be figured out how to do it. And then
Right.
the files can be moved over in the same way that they're on your C drive.
Okay.
Right now, they can be moved to where they need to go when you're ready to let everybody look at them.
Okay.
But you still retain the use of that managed workspace and all your connections. And if
Right.
you move a file from one location to another in ProjectWise, your links will go with it.
Okay.
It keeps
That's
up
cool.
with it.
Okay. So
So
that may make other people, because it's not just hydro, it's other units too that are
Mhm,
just a
mhm.
little
Oh,
nervous
yeah.
about
Yeah.
having their work out there for everybody to see.
I understand. If that's all that it is,
Yeah.
if it's not a functionality
Yeah.
issue,
Okay.
then we can work around it and you can keep everything together.
Okay.
I believe anyway.
Okay. That sounds good.
Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack your
No, that's fine.
presentation there.
That's been
That's-
one of the concerns is this is,
Mm-hmm.
we just feel like I've heard it. I mean, from other people that they're just nervous about, they're not happy. They're not sure how their attorneys would feel about, how the company's attorneys would feel about them doing work on the NCDOT ProjectWise thing. It's a weird place to get into this conversation, but it's a conversation that's been had and how we're going to handle it moving forward.
Yeah,
Bill?
there's a,
Yes.
Bill, the one thing that was brought up in for construction was how they're pushing out the different versions of the workspace. And
Right.
so whether or not a certain project's ready to go, once they push that workspace, you're opening it in a different version. Now that file is now that new version when you open it. So like, I think that's a little bit of one caveat of the concerns from a consultant standpoint of us not being able to control those variables. And if that happens, most likely that's going to be on the consultant to fix and to back up or go backwards or because it's their responsibility for design.
And that's helpful to know and put out. I mean, and maybe we can figure out. Now, I think Elizabeth's trying to figure out how to get it so that it knows not to open up in a newer version. Right?
yes, as long as you're using the managed workspace, we can set it up. We've already got it set up so
Okay.
that, let's say a file was created for version 10.9 of ORD, it will not open. It will
In
give you an
10.10.
error message if you try to open it in 10.10.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great. That sounds good.
So we may be able to make steps. We may be able to make everybody feel better and everybody can work on ProjectWise and life will be good. So
All right. We have
I
some
know
other-
that, yeah,
Oh,
I
go
know
ahead.
that flex tables can be customized. It's a matter of if I want to output it so that push it to a PDF so that if I'm a consultant and I do the work and I need to create drainage sheets to be looked at or comp sheets to be looked at by Ernie and Michelle, then they're used to looking at it a certain way, and I have to push that to a PDF. Getting it to that right now is not the easiest,
Mhm.
but happy to talk about that later. Wouldn't the PDF working on hydro plans be the only folks with right permissions in the hydro folder and ProjectWise? It would be for us, but I would also imagine that whoever it is that's going to be reviewing the plans in hydro would also have right access to that. And then once we push it up to the drainage folder, or whether we need to work on the drainage folder or not, because we may have to revisit that too. Because the drainage folder is up there. In the old days, the drainage folder had read and write access for both us and roadway. And most people worked in the hydraulics folder until they got done and they would push it up. And after they pushed it up, they would stay working up there in the drainage folder until they were done. And you're asking, would they be able to revise text in the civil labeler? I don't know. That's gonna, now the part of the text being in the drain was I would have the container file be sent up there in the drainage folder where definitely roadway could move it, because that would just be a work nightmare if every time roadway needed to move something, they had to call and ask a hydro person if they could move the text.
Mhm. Yeah. Because we move it multiple times too as a
Yeah.
roadway, like when we put right of way on there, when we do other things as a roadway designer, we're constantly moving your text.
Yeah. And you got to be able to, and we want you to be able to move our text. I mean, We just, so. Yeah, I hope that works, and how it affects civil labeler, I don't know yet. We haven't. I guess we get to test that next.
Yeah, you can move serial labeler text.
Okay.
Oh,
do you see a problem with us
edit.
doing it that way? If we created a container file that just basically had reference files and text in it?
There's no problem, but I prefer you do it in the design model. Just like
Okay.
you
Then we
have.
would have to push all those DRM files up into the drainage folder.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, the same. I mean, the thing about plan labeling is the same. The only trick or the tricky part is just the profile and cross section where it's the labeling is not done in the design model. It's done in the drawing model. But the plan is a different animal where you do your labels in the plan view in the design model.
Well, now the container file that I would do it like you've got your CMD master file, and that's where I'm talking about possibly looking at just doing all the labels on that.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, that's like some of our consultant has a text, DGN file or labels.dgn file. They put all the annotation there. That's fine with us.
Okay. And really, it's going to come down to to some extent, each firm deciding how they want to do it. We're just trying to explore different ways.
Yeah.
To do
I
it.
think, it's preference. It's nothing technical wrong about it.
Okay. Yeah. Craig says if we've got the labels in the design file, it would move. It would change. That'd be interesting to see if it might change anyway. So.
No, it should be dependent because you can have your annotation in like a DSN file and your alignment in the ALG file. You shift your alignment, your label should also, because it's constrained to it, right?
Right.
And in the 10.10.20 version, you have what we call manage modification, where you're given, do you want your move annotation to be fixed to that alignment change or relative or, default to what is doing in 10.9. So yeah, the moving of text or annotation while updating geometry, that's been fixed, in the new 10.10.20 release.
Another thing that's changed in 10.10.20 is that a lot of the annotation now, a lot of the properties have moved from the drainage database. They're now available as part of the graphic itself, as a property of the graphic itself. And so that helps with annotation. So you can annotate items that are in a reference file without having to access the drainage database anymore.
Is that the new 10.10 feature, 10.10.20 feature?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour here. Bill, thank you for doing this presentation. It was very insightful, and I'm sure there's a lot more questions. So people can feel free to keep chatting in those, but I'll just remind everybody that on Thursday at 2:30, we're doing the wrap-up session, and we'll have some consultants there, and we'll be talking about some of the workflow between hydro and roadway and some of the issues that they've had, I think will be on the agenda. So tune in for that. And I highly recommend going and listening to some of the other presentations that have been given. There's a lot of good information in some of those, even though they might not be specific to like hydro. There's a lot of general microstation things in there. So highly encourage everybody to go watch the other unit presentations also. There is an email that if you have any questions, you can send them to that we'll be answering on Thursday too. So that's ncdot.ord.implementation.initiative@ncdot.gov. And that should be in some of your invites. So please just send emails there if you have any questions. We're having our next webinar today at 2:30 with the construction unit. So I hope y'all will join us there. It's not too late to sign up for that. So go and register, and thank y'all for your time today, and we will see y'all later.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Patty. Thanks, Ernie. Great job.